Welcome back to my Noiramore Academy game devlogs, folks. Today's subject is character design. In past episodes, I've shown you some of the designs I've created for my game's characters. In this episode, I'd like to talk more in depth about their designs and why I chose certain elements for each character. But be warned, viewer, if you haven't seen the previous episodes in this series, I highly recommend you do. They contain context about why I created this project and information about the setting, plot, and the game's design. Link in bio. Without further ado, it's time to talk character design. As I explained in episode 1, the Psyquine are the species of psychic unicorn people living on the planet of Noire, where my game takes place. The setting is themed after a blend of 1940s America and Britain, as well as the noir genre. The idea of the Psyquine actually came to me in a dream. On my previous project, Mariposa and the Galaxy Man, I had been looking to design a species that would live on the 40s themed planet, since I had already made alien species for the 70s, 50s, 30s, and 20s planets at that point. In the haze between awake and asleep, I imagined a species of hooved people that had deer antlers or unicorn horns. I immediately took to the idea and thought it would be cool if they were primarily black and white, like the movies of the time. The first character I designed for this planet was Judith Hovern, a clever psychic spy working for her country's government during a civil war. For her clothing, I looked up 40s American women's uniforms. A splash of red coloring on her eyes and lips brings attention to her face, while red gloves and horseshoes brings a balance to her color scheme across her design. I thought it would be a neat idea to have the rings around her horn be golden, to add some more vibrancy and emphasize the importance of the Psyquine horns. Looking back, I think I made her tail and horn way too big in these older designs. I was thinking about the good old exaggeration tip in character design, but I think I just made them too big here, and on her model as well. I'm altering this on the new models and designs. As for these circles on her face, I'll be talking about those a little later when I go over Psyquine biology. I kept iterating on her design as my art skills improved, but overall I was very happy with how she was already, and mostly stylistic changes were made. I also dug through references of 40s clothes and made her a wardrobe. Here you can start to see some of the more creepy aesthetic come into play in her design language. You see, when I thought about what her childhood might have been like, I imagined a creepy old boarding school similar in design to something out of a Tim Burton movie. It could fit into the essence of this black and white themed planet through its dark, colorless nature. Oh, and some people have asked if I was inspired by Wednesday. Not to, brag or anything, but I was concepting this before the show came out, fellas. But for real, the main feeling or, vibe I latched onto for her childhood was that part in A Secret Garden where the main character is wandering around the mansion exploring its mysteries. That scene held a chokehold over my childhood imagination and made me want to explore every old castle and mansion in existence. Thus, Noiramore Academy was born. When Mariposa ended up not working out, I came up with several ideas for smaller games I could make on a tighter budget. A game about Judith was on the idea list, but the Kitty Rue concept won out. When Kitty Rue was wrapping up development, though, I started getting a lot of ideas and inspiration for the Judith game. The first order of business was to design a pre-teen version of Judith. I doodled concepts in my notebook, then refined them in digital form. I changed her face shape and made her hair fluffier. For her outfit, I gathered references of 40s boarding school outfits and put together the elements I liked best. The colored tie adds a nice pop of color to her, since her lips no longer have red lipstick. Before I show off the rest of the cast, let me tell you a bit more about Psyquine biology. Psyquine horns have an average of 8 rings around them when they reach adulthood. The number of rings indicates the number of spells they can do simultaneously. For example, a Psyquine with 8 rings could lift 8 objects at a time, or lift 7 objects while telepathically contacting a friend, or create 5 platforms to use as stairs while calling 3 people at once. And each ring might have some kind of cooldown after use. The rings are kinda like spell slots, or a mana bar or something. Now, many adult Psyquine, depending on their job, may want to have more than 8 rings. There is a special, ancient procedure in Psyquine culture that imbues precious metals into the skin in specific patterns. These lines start from the horn or back of the head, and then usually end in a circle or two on the face or forehead. Each circle is a new spell slot. However, this procedure is painful and stressful on the body. The average Psyquine may only get 1 to 4 circles, while those who specialize in psychic talents or very technically demanding jobs may get 6 or more. For example, a bard who plays multiple instruments at a time. Special crystal rings are crafted to fit around specific bands on one's horn to enhance the spells that radiate from that band. The ring could enhance it, modify it, or soften it depending on the purpose. For example, using a ring to dampen a strong spell that may be too dangerous for a specific task. Now, there are several types of Psyquine besides the unicorn variety. Goat, deer, and antelope Psyquine also exist. Unicorn Psyquine are the most dexterous and flexible with spell usage. Goat or ram Psyquine use 1 ring on each horn per spell, making their spells stronger than those of unicorns. However, their spells are slower to recharge. Deer Psyquine power fluctuates greatly, since their horns grow over the year and then shed in the winter. At some times of the year they are the most powerful of the Psyquine, and at other times by far the weakest. Each horn on their antlers is a spell slot. Some deer are able to wield their shed horns as a sort of wand. Antelope Psyquine spells are very quick and have the most rings, but their spells are weaker in nature. There may also be cow or buffalo Psyquine, but I haven't designed those yet. While I'm calling these types by the animal they're most closely associated with, they'll probably have an in-universe name soon enough that would fit the setting better. Anyway, each of these types of Psyquine come from different parts of the planet of Noire. Our story takes place in the country continent of Corveth, which is historically populated by unicorn Psyquine. Due to trade and travel, however, there are other types that will be involved in the story too. Here are some additional fun facts. Psyquine blood is the metallic color of their horn stripes. Psychic power is channeled through their horn stripes and blood. The eye and clothing accent color of a Psyquine depends on their family. Every family has some kind of crest or color associated with them. Of course, many different families may share the same color due to the fact that there are millions of families. When a woman marries into a new family, a special ritual is performed at the wedding to change her eye color to that of her husband's. The same would be the case for the opposite. This ritual is done with rare minerals, and it is normally the groom's family that is responsible for providing them. Clothes are almost always some form of black and white due to a lack of plants to make dye from on their planet. Gloves are traditionally one of the only parts of the clothing set to be colored due to their small size and social significance. As explained in episode 1, Psyquine wear gloves due to their fingertips being sensitive and able to cause neural links between acquaintances. Shaking someone's hand is a respected custom for getting to know someone, as this action allows you to connect with their horn and tune in to their mental frequency, like sharing a phone number. Touching a crystal can also allow one to resonate with it and read the information stored within. Many Noires animals have crystals on them. Touching these can allow a Psyquine to somewhat communicate with the animal. Psyquine horns have long, thin crystals inside them. These are connected to their brains. Alright, now that you know all that fun stuff, let's go back to our cast of characters. I'm going to explain a bit about each and why I chose certain design elements for them. Let's start with some of Judith's fellow classmates. Judith's sister Deirdre has to look related to her, yet also like her own person. I made her eyes and forehead big to make her look younger, and the mark on her forehead and her glasses help her to stand out from her older sister. Her hair was actually inspired by the style of a kid I babysat. It was just such an adorable look that I wanted to put it on Deirdre. Since Deirdre is a musician, I decided I would give her a piccolo, a small, cute instrument that fits her personality. Lydia Cabrera was fun to design. I thought mixing the tropes of the sports-loving tomboy and the artist could be interesting to work with. Due to her headstrong and tough personality, I made her a goat Psyquine. As such, her tail is short and her hooves are cloven. Her body shape is more boxy, with a less flared skirt than Judith. Her neck bow is completely undone, since she doesn't bother to tie it. Even though she put on an apron to protect her clothes, her forceful, high-energy painting style leads it to be, well, only marginally helpful. I chose green as her color to represent her love of the outdoors and to emulate the grass stains that get all over the clothes of kids playing outside. Gina Wendigon was inspired by those kids who really like to pretend they're animals. In particular, I am looking at you, warrior cats girls. I was a horse girl growing up and ran around my house on all fours with plastic cups on my hands to make hoof sounds, so I probably wasn't much better. Anyway, Gina is an enthusiastic actor who was recently cast as a fluff bat in an upcoming school play. She is so dedicated to playing it perfectly that she is now method acting as a bat all the time, even if the play is months away. Fluff bats are a creature native to this planet, which I doodled in one of my notebooks. Gina, in her quest to act like one, has crafted a costume to wear. The wings are stitched from patchwork cloth, and her ears are covered with bat-styled ones on a headband. She wears a fluffy scarf made from shorn fluff bat fur, and wears a tail over her own, strapped on by a big belt. I thought giving her little freckles would be cute. Her fangs might be fake, but her bite is still painful. Don't get on her bad side. I picked a dark blue as her color to evoke the night sky that bats are known to fly in. Deacon Vespshire is one of Judith's longtime friends. He's a smart kid who really likes architecture, building stuff, and religious studies. His dad is a pastor who he really looks up to. He's the moral center of Judith's friend group, which can get on Judith's nerves, since she has a penchant for rule breaking. But Deacon isn't a wet blanket. He's willing to have fun as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. I actually based his look a bit off of Chris from Until Dawn, because when I designed him, I just played the game again, and I liked Chris. When designing the male uniform for the school, I once again looked at historical references. I thought it might be a neat idea for the uniform to have an optional blazer to go over the shirt and knitted vest. The girl's uniform would have this option too. A little badge with the school's mascot on it brings the fit together. Deacon's purple color represents his wisdom and creativity. Becky Landerhoof is a former friend of Judith. After a major falling out, they barely talk to one another anymore. At first, she seems like the spoiled, bratty type, but she's actually quite nice and just has high expectations of the people around her. I gave her split black and white hair that was inspired by this Shadow High doll I found. Instead of the normal tie, I gave her a nice bow since I felt that fit her character more. Her skirt is more flared out and she has a little black diamond on her forehead. I made her socks a dark gray color to contrast with her bright skin and differentiate her outfit from Judith's. She is meant to emulate the grace of a classical unicorn, so I gave her hair big, soft curls. This badge on her chest is for the school's Historical Reenactment Society, which she is the president of. It's an incredibly central part of her character, so I wanted to have something on her outfit to represent it. Her color is pink for obvious reasons. She's a girly girl. I think by accident I may have made her look a lot like someone specific. Nicholas Strumps is Becky's boyfriend and just as much of a history nut as she is. Both he and her run the reenactment club, and he is the prime expert on naval battles and shipstery. His current great project is to build a seaworthy, small-scale version of his favorite warship and use it to reenact battles on the school's lake. I gave him a ship captain's hat that he inherited from his father. How does he get it on around his horns? Probably little slits in the fabric of the band that button up or something? Instead of a tie, he's wearing a handkerchief reminiscent of a sailor's uniform. Unlike Deacon, he wears his uniform without the blazer. You may have noticed that he's a deer Syquine. His family comes from the Inked Wastes, which has a large population of deer folk, for a reason that is a long story, so I'll explain another day. His color is a nice blue-green representative of the ocean. This is Marisol Aker. She's a horror-loving, true crime-studying girl who believes she's descended from royalty. Since she's Becky and Nicholas's best friend, she also participates in the Historical Reenactment Club and insists on playing the part of a princess. Because of her belief, I thought it would make sense for her to wear a fake crown and a fancy little ascot. Her striped leggings were inspired by some of Tim Burton's characters. Since her hair is a 4C type, I thought it would be cute for the end of her tail to have this same type. Her color is a bright orange to represent Halloween, or her creepy side, as well as to bring to mind the golden treasure of a princess. Whew, okay, so we've gone through the kid characters. What about the adults? Well, Since many of the adults in this story are suspects in the mystery, I probably won't be revealing too much about them. After all, the discovery of a suspect's story and motivation is part of the fun of a mystery story. I'll be a little more general and short with my descriptions of the adult characters and their designs. Also, most of them aren't modeled in 3D yet, so bear with me. Mrs. Nunatalk is the psychic talents teacher of the school. Like Nicholas, she hails from the Inked Wastes and is a deer Psyquine. I wanted her to have a cute, round-shaped language and a unique body type. She's one of the younger teachers, yet appears as neat and strict as any of the older ones. She's the teacher that Judith gets into the most trouble with, as it's easy to rile her up. Miss Keene is the music teacher. Her facial expressions and tone can sometimes come across as cold and unapproachable, but her words are kind and she is patient with her students. She's Deirdre's favorite teacher. I wanted her design to be elegant and sharp, like the music she plays. Her clothes, face, and body were all modeled after this idea. Her clothes color scheme is more on the light side of the spectrum to give some variety to the cast and to represent the bright choir music she conducts. Mr. Claiborne is the headmaster of Noiramore Academy. Formerly, he was a military general in the Onyx War. He tries to run the school with military precision, but has found that taking command of unruly children is very different from trained soldiers. I gave him a nice suit with a long coat. He's got a little military medal to give a hint to his past. Miss Noiramore was previously a headmistress of the school. However, due to poor financial decisions and accusations of mental instability, she was deposed by the school board many years ago. Now living in destitution nearby the school, she mourns the loss of her previous life. I gave her black clothing and a veil to represent this mourning. Her clothes are torn and dirty due to her living conditions. Her hair is matted and her horn is cracked. She says the scar on her face is from a strange beast that roams the forests near the school. Mrs. Loon is the keeper of the school's chapel and the pastor's wife. Her job is to clean and tend to the altar and sanctuary. She is also responsible for counseling the girls of the school. Mrs. Loon is a quiet and very sweet person, but many children have noticed that she seems to sometimes be in pain when she moves and is often tired. Like most of the church's staff, she wears traditional clothing. I was inspired by some Orthodox Christian outfits and Renaissance fashion. The Bard of the Inked Wastes is a charming but mysterious man who hails from one of the most dangerous places in the world. His haunting melodies bear tales of woe and war, horrible creatures and haunted caverns. His character just kind of popped into my head while I was listening to the track Drive Away by Thomas Newman from the Series of Unfortunate Events movie soundtrack. Specifically, the string section that starts at 1 minute 20 seconds and at 2 minutes 13 seconds. Can't play it due to copyright, but you can find it on YouTube or Spotify and check it out if you're curious. He was inspired by gothic vampire pirate type fashion. You goths out there know what I mean. Mrs. Grinsby is the history teacher. Ever since the rumored beast of the woods attacked her and snapped off her horn years ago, she's been a nervous, fearful wreck. It is easy for her to be stressed out, and the hijinks of her students is usually the cause. I gave her a frazzled appearance with bent glasses and unkempt hair. The ugly yellow-green color on her represents her sickly fear. The new science professor at Noiramore Academy, Mr. Bagshaw, is a smart man who used to be a part of the wartime psychic research division for the Drakkenspire government. He's a scientist with a murky past sealed by confidential records. Since he's so smart and talented in psychics, I gave him a large forehead with a lot of spell rings on it. He's a bit hunched over and uses a cane in his older years. I also gave him a goofy little science teacher bow tie. He's a clever, warm old man that Judith actually likes, which is rare for a teacher. And he is the kidnapping victim in this story. It is up to you, playing as Judith Hovern, to investigate his disappearance and solve the mystery. There are several minor characters as well, such as the cafeteria worker, the school nurse, and the librarian. Some other students will also be interactable and give side quests. If you have any questions about these characters and character design, feel free to ask away in the comment section below. And with that, so ends our episode on character design. I hope this was informative. Next episode will either be on animation or maybe environment art. See you then! Please support these videos on Patreon. Also, follow me on Instagram and Twitter. The Fantastic Kitty Rue is now available on Steam. Link in the description below.